In an effort to shield humanity from the perils of nature, a nation known as Blue Moon was established. Blue Moon was under the rule of a wise and gifted king, a man of great kindness and fairness. Under his leadership, the citizens of the nation thrived in an era of peace and prosperity. However, the tranquility was shattered when a rebellion erupted from within the nation's borders, plunging it into chaos and despair. Hatred and destruction ran rampant, and countless lives were lost to the merciless edge of cold steel. Amidst this turmoil, as faith and justice seemed all but abandoned, a mysterious figure in a red mask emerged. This enigmatic hero confronted and ultimately vanquished the leader of the rebel forces, bringing an end to the brutal conflict. In recognition of his valor and his role in restoring peace, the citizens bestowed upon him the name Redman. Fast forward a century, and the events of that dark period were now but distant memories. Inside a classroom situated in what was once the heart of Blue Moon, the principal addressed the students. One curious student questioned why they found themselves in the slums, rather than in the once prosperous Blue Moon. A classmate responded matter-of-factly, explaining that they were descendants of the rebel forces, the antagonists of the story. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What superpower is the best? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. The principal, however, sought to absolve them of any guilt, emphasizing that they, the current generation, were not responsible for the sins of their ancestors. With this revelation, the principal concluded the class and announced that it was time for lunch. The students were instructed to assist Mr. Kim, their unique-named elementary school teacher, who cared for them in what could be more aptly described as an orphanage. Outside in the garden, Mr. Kim diligently picked fruits, but the students arrived to lend a hand. They greeted him cheerfully, and together they headed to the cafeteria. As they received their meals, some students expressed annoyance at the repetitive bean-based diet. However, one boy, Hajin, took his displeasure a step further by tossing his beans aside, declaring his refusal to eat them. One of the girls, unimpressed by his actions, chastised Hajin, reminding him that he couldn't just eat what he liked. Hajin retorted, but Mr. Kim overheard the commotion and intervened. Kim advised Hajin to eat his beans, then questioned if he understood why. One of the students explained that people in the slums faced daily starvation, making the provided school meals a blessing they shouldn't take for granted. The group agreed, acknowledging the importance of eating everything to grow up healthy. Suddenly, a boy named Hawk Beekson picked up the discarded beans from the ground and began munching on them. Mr. Kim, alarmed, urged him to stop, warning that eating food off the ground could make him sick. Beekson, however, nonchalantly revealed that he had consumed everything, leaving Kim with a worried inquiry about whether he had swallowed any dirt. Meanwhile, the principal observed the scene with a warm smile, grateful for the resilience and unity of these children who carried the legacy of their troubled past in their hearts. In that intimate moment between the principal, Mr. Kim, and the 9 children, a sense of belonging and care filled the air. The principal held a deep affection for these youngsters, cherishing them more than anything else in his life. Playfully, one of the children claimed to be the hero of justice, Redman, and playfully declared his intention to break up the imaginary fight. However, a girl in the group protested, longing to be Redman as well, and asserting that the boy was always the hero. He retorted, unwilling to share his heroic role, proclaiming himself as the fastest. But the playful banter was interrupted when someone swiftly snatched the red mask from the boy's grasp. Surprisingly, it was their teacher, Mr. Kim, who had taken the mask. He emphasized the importance of compromise, leaving the shocked boy to ponder his actions. Taishin, the boy who had initially claimed to be Redman, pleaded with Mr. Kim to return the red mask, explaining that they were playing a hero game. Mr. Kim allowed Taishin to continue playing, but reminded him not to carelessly use others' belongings. He then called upon a teenager named Maru, asking if he would guide the children in playing soccer at the playground. Maru hesitated at first, expressing reluctance, but Mr. Kim stressed that, being the eldest among them, Maru should take on the leadership role. Reluctantly, Maru agreed and led the children to the soccer field. Taishin, eager to involve his siblings in the soccer game, warned them to be cautious and not trip and fall. Meanwhile, he found himself still gazing at the red mask. Feeling a growing fascination, he examined it closely, and as he peered into the mask's eye holes, his own eyes widened, revealing red pupils. Suddenly, the principal appeared behind Taishin, noting that he had been wondering where his mask had disappeared to, and had now found it here. The principal asked if Taishin had taken it, and he admitted to being the one who had taken the mask. Curious, the principal inquired what Taishin found interesting about the seemingly ordinary mask. Taishin hesitated, but then explained that when he touched the mask, It made his heart beat faster, and his body felt hotter, as though he were a furious person. The principal found this amusing, as he had never seen someone as calm as Taishin become so impassioned. With a chuckle, the principal reassured Taishin that it was perfectly fine, and asked why he felt that way. Taishin confessed he wasn't sure, but it was as if the mask had stirred something within him. The principal found the situation quite amusing, given his perception of Taishin as someone who had never been agitated. He laughed along with Taishin before redirecting their focus. The principal suggested that they end their conversation for now, as rain might be on the horizon, and they needed to collect the laundry. The day continued with a sense of camaraderie, the mysterious red mask lingering in Taishin's thoughts as he went about his tasks, alongside his beloved principal and fellow students. As Mr. Kim and the principal peacefully hung the remaining clothes on the line, they commented on the sudden change in weather, with clouds obscuring the once sunny sky. The principal took this opportunity to share a troubling rumor that had been circulating in the neighborhood. He mentioned reports of individuals in suits kidnapping children in the area, despite the remote and secluded location of their school. Curious, Mr. Kim inquired further, and the principal advised him to keep the information in mind as a guardian. Mr. Kim nodded in agreement, his concern growing. Meanwhile, back on the soccer field, Hajin shouted that he was about to make a move, and kicked the soccer ball with all his might. However, to everyone's surprise, the ball veered off course in the opposite direction, leaving Maru, who was guarding the net, utterly puzzled. Barrel, ever straightforward, remarked that Hajin's skills had not improved, bluntly telling him that he was really bad. Hajin, somewhat embarrassed, hushed her and told her to be quiet. Determined to make amends, Taishin chased after the stray ball, announcing that he would retrieve it. The ball eventually came to a halt near a rusty gate, and beyond it, Taishin spotted 3 large trucks. On the other side of the school, within the building, Mr. Kim expressed his gratitude to Soyeon for her assistance in completing the laundry before the rain. He thanked her sincerely, but Soyeon insisted there was no need to mention it. However, their moment of tranquility was abruptly interrupted when a figure suddenly dashed towards them, urgently calling out to Mr. Kim. Startled, Mr. Kim realized that it was Taishin, and he appeared injured. Worried, Mr. Kim asked Taishin why he looked like this, and if he had tripped during the soccer game. Taishin, clearly distressed, quickly explained that eerie men had taken everyone, including his brothers and sisters. Mr. Kim was alarmed by this revelation, and questioned if it was indeed an abduction. A mysterious man in a white lab coat emerged and greeted Mr. Kim, identifying himself as a scientist sent by Blue Moon City. The man, Nogel, explained that they had come to seek exceptional youthful talent that could benefit the city. He noted their luck in finding as many as 9 children in the dilapidated area. Strangely, Nogel mentioned that he'd like to smile, but he couldn't, as he had no eyelids. Mr. Kim was understandably puzzled and asked Nogel to clarify. However, another man, dressed in a dark suit and accompanied by several more men, intervened. This man accused them of being human traffickers and threatened to eliminate Mr. Kim and take the children. He questioned whether Mr. Kim's curiosity had been satisfied and scolded Nogel for not being cautious about revealing his true intentions. Nogel admitted that it had slipped out unintentionally, leaving Mr. Kim and the children in a perilous situation, caught between conflicting claims and unknown dangers. The situation escalated rapidly as the man in the dark suit deemed it beyond their projections to have acquired so many youngsters from the secluded school. He instructed his crew to escort the children and singled out one particular child to be taken with them. Panic surged through the group as the headmaster, realizing the imminent danger, urgently pushed Mr. Kim and the children aside, directing them to escape from their current location without delay. Confronting the armed men, the headmaster adamantly informed them that they couldn't pass through this place. However, his words were drowned out by a sudden and resounding gunshot that echoed through the air. The man in the dark suit labeled the headmaster a fool, questioned the purpose of his resistance. He acknowledged the headmaster's apparent combat skills, but expressed exasperation at such defiance. Without further hesitation, the man unleashed a barrage of shots, piercing the headmaster's body multiple times. As the headmaster lay on the ground, lifeless and bleeding, the man remarked that he was running short on time and urged the headmaster to simply accept his fate and perish. After the continuous shots, both Mr. Kim and the principal lay on the blood-soaked ground, their lives extinguished in an instant. The man then directed his men to abduct the children before sunrise. The children, still reeling from shock and fear, were forcibly taken away, their cries echoing in the eerie silence that followed. In the aftermath of the horrifying ordeal, Mr. Kim struggled to comprehend the nightmare that had unfolded before him. It was a situation they had only heard of through unsettling rumors. Their school, hidden away in the remote mountains, had been their refuge, a dreamlike haven for children who had no place to go after the war had ravaged their slums. Now, that dream lay shattered, replaced by a horrifying reality. Mr. Kim couldn't hold back his tears as he grappled with the harsh truth. In his mind, he had envisioned a future of eternal happiness for himself and the children, but now, that future seemed uncertain, overshadowed by the grim reality of their current predicament. As Mr. Kim contemplated their uncertain fate, the principal, barely clinging to life, crawled towards him. He reminded Mr. Kim that in the slums, countless people perished daily, and he had aspired to protect these children by establishing a school in the mountains. Regrettably, he had fallen short of that goal, and now it fell upon Mr. Kim to safeguard the future of the children. With trembling hands, the principal placed a red mask onto Mr. Kim's face, a symbol of their shared responsibilities and the legacy that had been thrust upon him. Then, with his last ounce of strength, the principal collapsed, leaving the red mask on Mr. Kim's face as a solemn reminder of the duty that now rested upon his shoulders. As Kim's eyes turned red and his life force slowly ebbed away, something within him stirred. A surge of fury coursed through his physique, and in that moment, Kim underwent a profound transformation. He sat up, his appearance altered, and let out a gut-wrenching howl of anguish. Meanwhile, on the route the man had chosen, he inquired of his comrade if 10 minutes had passed and questioned why they had to complicate things by relocating the truck independently. His comrade explained that it was a precautionary measure to prevent potential pursuers. They discussed Soyan and the children who were being transported in the vehicle. The driver notified the man that it was time to depart, but the man asked his comrade to wait, as he wanted to smoke a cigarette before they left. Suddenly, an unexpected figure materialized and chastised the man, condemning smokers as nuisances and pondering who had invented cigarettes. The man froze in terror, and his scream of horror startled his comrade, who wondered what had gone wrong. To their horror, the man witnessed another individual, adorned with a blood-streaked hand and a red mask, addressing his decapitated comrade and stating that they were in a non-smoking area. The man's attention shifted to the masked figure, who was now eyeing him with intensity. The other man frantically questioned the masked individual's identity. In a desperate bid to escape, the man attempted to drive away in the truck, but found himself lifted off the ground as the masked figure clutched the rear of the vehicle and hoisted it effortlessly. He demanded to know how the man dared to kidnap his kids, and then forcefully slammed the truck onto the ground. Inside the truck, Soyan emerged with a throbbing head and was stunned to see a man aiming a firearm at her. However, her shock was short-lived as she was swiftly lifted by a colossal man wearing a red mask. She questioned if this figure was Redman, but he simply clenched his hand, poised his fist, and announced that he was an elementary school teacher. With a single strike, he caused the man's face to explode, splattering blood onto the ground. As he stood there, Soyan recalled someone telling everyone that people's status was determined at birth. Those with noble blood were blue, while those with common blood were red. She understood the distinction and the importance of remembering it for the rest of their lives, realizing that they were fundamentally different. Back inside the school, Kim wrestled with the red mask, frustrated that it wouldn't come off. He shouted at the mask, demanding that it detach from him, but felt as if his neck might snap first. In a fit of anger, he angrily tossed a table, realizing that his rage would not subside because of the mask's inexplicable grip on him. As Soyan called him a teacher and questioned if he had become a Redman now, Kim's fury continued to consume him. He angrily flung tables while furiously asking Soyan if she thought he looked like a hero, declaring that he was just a monster. Soyan, tears in her eyes, confessed that he was frightening her, but Kim yelled at her to stop crying and speak clearly. In his frustration, he once again attempted to remove the stubborn mask, slamming his head hard on the ground, which left Soyan frozen in fear. Lying there with his head on the ground, Kim found the strength to apologize to Soyan, admitting that no matter how angry he was, he shouldn't have taken it out on her. He recognized that he wasn't thinking clearly and asked Soyan for some time to reflect, to which she consented. After burying the principal, Kim sat in front of the grave and pondered who the principal really was and why he had that mask. Memories flooded back to him, including a time when he had been roughed up by some men who questioned why he, a loser like him, was back when they had warned him not to return. They had beaten him, and one of the men complained that they had wasted their energy for nothing, while another noted that Kim didn't react even when hit, making them feel worthless. The men eventually departed, leaving Kim wounded on the ground. It was at this point that the principal had approached him and remarked that he had been beaten badly. He inquired how Kim could endure in such a brutal world when he was so frail. Kim, in his own turmoil, questioned the purpose of surviving in such a damned world. The The principal responded by saying that Kim was surviving just fine and acting like a child. The principal then mentioned a place that was ideal for someone like Kim. Shortly after, they reached the school and Kim was taken aback. He told the principal that he had been treated like a child and was now expected to be an elementary school teacher. The principal explained that thinking a teacher only needed to instruct was a prejudice, and while he couldn't make Kim an adult, he could make him a student. Kim confessed that initially he had followed the principal because he had nowhere else to go and had intended to escape eventually. However, over time, he found that he fit well as a teacher, and the principal admitted that he looked forward to Kim's assistance each year, something he had grown accustomed to. One day, Kim mustered the courage to ask the principal why he had chosen him when there were people in the slums more pitiful and helpless than him. The principal replied that the first time he saw Kim's eyes, he thought he was a pushover, making them both awkwardly laugh at the unique connection that had brought them together. The principal clarified to Kim that, in reality, he considered himself foolishly kind and weak, which was precisely why he liked him. He emphasized that he had never been careless in his treatment of the children, and as evidence, pointed out that, in his role as a teacher, he had never been neglectful in his care for them. The principal explained that, for him, it was common sense that children should be equal to him as a teacher, and that was why Teacher Kim was there. Furthermore, the principal expressed his unwavering belief in Kim and told him that if something were to happen to him, Kim should take his place because the children needed a school. Soyeon, with tears in her eyes, urged him not to go, fearing the risks involved. Kim acknowledged the dangers but insisted that he had to go to safeguard the children, whom he considered their cherished family. He assured Soyeon that, just as she had always been there for him, she would manage on her own. Soyeon embraced him tightly, telling him he must return, and he vowed to do so. In the slums where many beggars struggled to survive, one of the beggars suddenly yelled in surprise and dread. He asked another man if a truck had passed through there yesterday. The man tearfully replied that he didn't know and apologized for not having the information. The beggar was annoyed that the truck hadn't passed through the area either and regretted not letting those two guys live. As he walked through the streets, he considered the rarity of sightings of suits and trucks in the slums. Criminal acts in the area surpassed simple theft and murder, making him wonder about the unusual circumstances. He briefly contemplated going to the red light district, but then had a revelation. He recalled that Nogel had mentioned searching for excellent young talent for the city, and a scientist had claimed to be sent by Blue Moon City. This realization led him to conclude that this was not just regular crime. The city was somehow involved. Fueled by anger, he cursed and resolved to head there without delay. The following day, at the big gates leading to the city, 3 men stood guard. One of them handed a paper to their senior, reporting that an official document had just arrived. The document mentioned a white truck from the gourmet company that had gone to the slum and hadn't returned. The senior inquired if the company had indeed gone to the slum, and the man speculated that they likely went there to distribute free food. Infuriated, the senior berated his men, calling them idiots and questioning the purpose of giving free food to those he considered useless people. He realized that they had been betrayed and were now missing, which meant he had to clean up the mess. Frustrated and despondent, he pondered the unfortunate turn of events and lamented the hardships of his life. As Kim disguised as the beggar approached the main gate of Blue City, the men on guard questioned who the big guy was. The senior guard informed them that a bold beggar had arrived, seemingly here for some sightseeing, and ordered him to stop. The senior emphasized that it was Blue City's main gate and inquired about the beggar's purpose. The beggar, undeterred, mentioned that he was searching for a white truck. The senior guard was puzzled and asked why he was looking for it. In response, the beggar abruptly grabbed the paper from the senior's hand, discovering that it was from the gourmet company. The senior, infuriated, demanded that the paper be returned immediately. With a smirk, the beggar agreed, but instead slammed the paper into the senior guard's face, knocking him to the ground and breaking it. The 2 other guards were left shocked and scared by his audacious act. The beggar then issued a challenge, asking which of the men knew the way to the gourmet company, declaring that the one who answered correctly would stay alive. In response, one of the guards impulsively shot at the beggar, attempting to end his life. However, the beggar forcefully shoved the shooter against the gate, admonishing him for interrupting when someone was speaking. He then turned to the other man and inquired if he intended to shoot as well. The man hesitated and eventually replied in the negative, agreeing to guide the beggar to the gourmet company. However, the man added a caveat, explaining that there was a small issue. The entrance to the gourmet company was blocked by a large door and wall that could only be opened from the inside, and only when the moon was out. This meant they would have to wait 6 hours for the moon to appear. The beggar considered the situation and realized that, in the meantime, the man might call for backup, which would be detrimental for him. Without hesitation, the beggar grabbed the man's collar and told him it was too late. He then used his extraordinary strength to jump high, taking the man with him, and hopped onto the gate's sides until they reached the top. He pushed the man forward, making him fearful, but reassured him to stop worrying and look carefully. While perched on the gate, the beggar asked the man about the location of the gourmet company. Approximately 100 years ago, there was a failed uprising in the country. Those who were cast out lived in poverty, while those who had united initially started fighting among themselves for scarce resources. Unity dissolved, and subsequent generations divided into areas such as slum streets, fashion streets, red light streets, and graveyard streets. In contrast, the heroes who had safeguarded the nation had constructed secure walls and massive structures on top of the ruins, giving rise to the city of wealth and honor, Blue Moon City. However, the beggar questioned the notion of wealth and honor when everything lay in ruins. He saw the city's grand size as impressive, but considered it all to be in vain. Kim continued his conversation with the man, expressing his amazement at the idea of buildings made of gold in Blue Moon City. The man clarified that the area near the wall was left undeveloped and abandoned, with some companies like the Gourmet Company located there. The actual structures were all downtown. The man felt a sense of desperation, fearing that there would be no one to find and rescue him. However, he believed that if he did his best to lead Kim toward downtown, things might work out. As they discussed their route, someone suddenly appeared and corrected them, stating that they should turn left instead of right. The man was taken aback, sweating with anxiety, wondering who she was. Kim casually labeled him as a mere gatekeeper, and the man panicked, admitting his mistake, pleading for his life, and begging to be spared. Kim thanked the newcomer for the correction and asked for her identity. The woman introduced herself as Panda, explaining that she was a high school teacher on Fashion Street. She also noted that Kim's attire suggested he was from a slum street. Kim shared his name and mentioned that he was an elementary school teacher in a slum street. Panda considered their meeting fortunate as they shared the same profession and were headed in the same direction. She proposed that they continue their journey together, and Kim agreed. This revelation left the gatekeeper shocked, fearing the worst for his earlier mistake. Meanwhile, in another location, a woman found herself in a dimly lit and blood-stained room, uncertain of her whereabouts. She recalled her normal path back from school when a white truck suddenly appeared, and questionable individuals encircled her and her sister. Tied up and unable to see clearly in the dim room, she wondered if her sister was elsewhere. The sound of approaching footsteps caught her attention, and she anxiously watched the door. A shadowy figure loomed outside, followed by a large, menacing man entering the room. The man emitted a growling sound and advanced toward a table filled with wrapped items, leaving the woman frozen in a mixture of shock and fear. The man in the dimly lit room continued to unwrap the items, revealing human corpses within. The woman watched in terror as one of the wrapped items fell to the floor, exposing a lifeless body. The man nonchalantly picked up the fallen corpse and dragged it out of the room, leaving her in shock. She realized that she and her sister weren't the only ones captured. All the heaps in the room were actually people awaiting a gruesome fate. Suddenly, another shadow appeared behind the door, and the woman wondered if it was the same man returning. However, a different man entered and announced that he had found her. He inquired if she was Ryan and assured her that he was there to rescue her. She noticed a Fingers Chain logo on his shirt and deduced that someone from Fashion Street had sent him. The man explained that he had gotten lost while navigating the building's layout, but was now determined to get her out of there. As he began to free her, she made a sound as if wanting to say something. The man understood that she must be scared, given her young age and being alone, but she made another sound, prompting him to hush her, fearing they could get caught. However, when the man glanced behind him, he saw a white face with a long neck, but no eyes staring at them. The eerie face announced that it smelled an unfamiliar man, causing the man to break out in a cold sweat. In response to the looming threat, the man grabbed his long, sharp knife, acknowledging that the creature looked horrifying. The monster's side face then changed as it inquired if it could eat the man. The monster casually replied, "Bon appétit," and lunged forward with a swarm of sharp teeth, intent on consuming the man. Meanwhile, in the ruins, the gatekeeper guided Kim and Panda to their destination. The man at the entrance warmly greeted them and proudly declared that they had reasonable prices and excellent taste. He identified their establishment as the Gourmet Company, a place known for selling trust. Panda eagerly mentioned the wide variety of foods they offered, including meat, fish, and vegetables. The gatekeeper was equally surprised, as it was his first visit to the store as well. The man from the Gourmet Company informed them that they only distributed products after a strict selection process and had recently signed a deal with Giant Food, indicating their plans to expand their store locations. As Kim, Panda, and the gatekeeper stood in the Gourmet Company, the manager explained that they were only selling to members that day, suggesting that Kim and Panda could return the next day. The gatekeeper recalled that the Gourmet Company didn't conduct regular business on Mondays. Panda expressed her disappointment, but the vendors, realizing they were potential customers, called over their manager and suggested that they should be allowed to make quick purchases. The gatekeeper and Panda tried to explain their interest in purchasing human flesh, causing shock and confusion. The gatekeeper had never heard of such a horrifying proposition, and he asked Panda to clarify. Kim understood that Panda was referring to cannibalism, a gruesome idea. However, the manager interjected and admitted that they did, in fact, sell human flesh. This revelation left the gatekeeper even more astounded. The manager continued, mentioning that their regular customers didn't refer to it as human flesh, and their unusual clothing and appearance had raised questions. Kim removed his disguise, revealing his true identity, and demanded to know the manager's identity. He asserted that even in the most decrepit parts of Slum Street, cannibalism was not practiced. As he spoke, Kim's red mask shattered into fragments, fueled by his growing anger. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Dead-End 8546 who commented, "This is good. I hope you'll do all of it," on our unordinary video. Thanks for commenting. Kim continued to question the manager about their location and the whereabouts of his children. Panda urged him to calm down, explaining that as far as she knew, the gourmet company didn't use children as young as elementary school students for cannibalism. She reassured him that even if they had taken the children, they wouldn't eat them. Panda also mentioned that she was particularly concerned because teenagers were typically the ones sold. The gatekeeper, too, began to doubt the severity of the situation, questioning if Panda's expression truly conveyed urgency. Kim began to relax somewhat, aided by Panda's words, and his mask rapidly reformed around his face. Kim questioned Panda, seeking confirmation that this meant the children were indeed in the gourmet company. Panda, noting the rapid restoration of Kim's mask and its potential connection to his emotional state, affirmed that the children were likely frightened and waiting for rescue, emphasizing the need to find them immediately. The manager, with a general understanding of the situation, acknowledged that they were guardians of recently kidnapped children. He didn't comprehend how Kim and Panda, hailing from less reputable streets, had managed to reach their location but apologized, stating that they couldn't return the precious cargo. However, instead of cooperating, he ordered his men to eliminate Kim and Panda. Kim remained calm and waited as the men approached. When they got close, he struck one of the men, causing all three attackers to scream in pain. He flung them aside and declared his intention to retrieve his children. The men, realizing that regular weapons were ineffective against Kim, dropped their knives. They were astonished to see strange red strands emanating from Kim's body, and they wondered if he was immortal, as he healed even after sustaining injuries. Panda, who had been deflecting projectiles aimed at them, commented that this explained why Kim had ventured there alone. Meanwhile, the gatekeeper, trembling and conflicted, described Kim as a red devil and questioned whose side he should be on. As they began to run towards the scene, the gatekeeper grappled with his inner turmoil, torn between his duty as a law enforcement officer and his instincts to help. On the flip side, a large man lunged at Panda, but she skillfully dodged the attack, pivoted for momentum, and forcefully kicked the bald man in the head. The man, now bleeding, hurled an insult at her, prompting her to strike his head with her carrying case, suggesting that he use more polite language. The gatekeeper, impressed by Panda's combat skills, complimented her, to which she replied that on the streets, knowing how to fight was essential. Panda assumed a fighting stance, declaring that a teacher who protects her students is formidable, and inviting her attackers to bring it on. However, a horde of armed individuals charged at her angrily, causing her to question whether she had overplayed her hand. Realizing the danger, she decided to make a quick retreat, leaving the puzzled gatekeeper behind, who also fled and called for her. Meanwhile, in the gourmet company's underground restaurant, nobles dined in tranquility. A waiter accidentally sat on a dish that the chef explained was tomorrow's main course, a scallop steak prepared with a newly concocted sauce. A man with sharp teeth tasted the dish and expressed his dissatisfaction, stating that it lacked a compelling flavor and wasn't fresh enough. He reminded the staff about the important guests expected the next day and demanded an extraordinary culinary experience. Chairman Hyol Oh of the gourmet company inquired about the status of a recently acquired girl, and the chef apologized for the dish's shortcomings. Chairman Hyol Oh instructed the chef to prepare her as the main course for the banquet, emphasizing the need to impress their clientele. Outside the gourmet company, multiple people were falling from the sky, leaving Panda amazed and the gatekeeper frightened. The manager yelled that a monster was present, but then his voice turned into a painful moan as Kim squeezed his back hard, accusing him of being the real monster for eating people. However, Kim grew frustrated because his mask was making him act rashly, and he hadn't had the chance to question the manager about the children's location. Panda comforted him, saying she knew where the children were located. Kim was surprised and asked how she knew. Grinning, she showed her finger chain embroidery patch, explaining that those with such patches could communicate through thoughts alone. She mentioned that only Handsome, the chief of Fashion Street, could create such items, and that he had the rare skill to infuse items with magical powers. She then dashed off, calling Kim to follow her back inside the gourmet company. Inside the gourmet company, a girl named Rai held a similar finger chain embroidery patch. She stood before a crowd of elites, and the auctioneer called out steep bids for parts of her body, shocking her with their lack of compassion. Fuel commented to the chef that her young age seemed to increase the price, attributing it to her freshness. The auctioneer wrapped up the bidding and declared that the dissection expert would now start his dreadful task. Horrified, Rai crumpled, weeping as she didn't want to perish like this, feeling that it would make the struggles of her sister and her would-be hero meaningless. Just as the blade got close, she frantically begged for someone to rescue her. In that instant, Kim burst into the room and promptly knocked down both the carver and the auctioneer. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.